I didn't know it was coming. I didn't get a call, a warning, or even a calendar invite. Just an email. No greeting, no signature. Effective immediately, your base salary has been reduced by 40%. It hit my inbox at 6:08 p.m., just as I was uploading the final version of the compliance documents for the Meridian Global contract, a $20 million sustainability framework Brixton Energy had been chasing for over a year. A deal I'd built from scratch. The message sat there centered on my screen like a death sentence. At first I thought it was a mistake. Then I checked the sender, internal admin, no name, no explanation. I sat there still. The office around me had emptied without me noticing. Even the lights had started their nightly fade to save power. Outside, the floor-to-ceiling windows downtown Seattle buzzed with life. Inside, I was frozen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard ready to fire back. But I didn't. No one knew yet. Not my team. Not even Cole Armstrong, the VP who had been overseeing the deal from the sidelines. At least I used to think he was just overseeing. I slowly walked to the glass wall of my office and looked down 12 stories at the intersection below. A year ago, I would have cried. Now, I just felt cold, like I was watching a chessboard shift without me. And the worst part wasn't the cut I made enough from past bonuses to get by for a while. The worst part was the cowardice. I had worked nights, weekends, holidays. I had flown to Zurich on a 5-hour notice to fix a miscommunication in person. I had memorized the contract down to clause 47C, and someone thought I could be quietly erased. But they'd miscalculated one thing. They thought I was just an operator, someone who pushed paper and signed forms. What Cole didn't know was this. The final version of the agreement, the one Meridian Global trusted, the one that still needed a final sign-off. Only I could authorize it. I didn't forward the email. I didn't reply. I just smiled. If they wanted quiet, they'd get quiet. Until I made noise they couldn't ignore. Cole Armstrong wasn't new to ambition. He was new to subtlety. The first time he showed up to a Meridian Global check-in, I assumed he was there to observe. Maybe provide cover from upper management, which had been spooked after we lost the Helix Solar bid last quarter. He smiled a lot that day. Too much. "Lauren, that was brilliant," he said. After the call, clapping a little too hard against the glass table. "You have a gift for translating chaos into client speak." I nodded politely. He didn't know I'd been rewriting the project scope at 3 a.m. after Meridian added another carbon offset clause. Cole started coming to more meetings after that. Not leading, just present. He'd ask for recaps, asked to just be CC'd. He shadowed my meetings, borrowed my pitch decks, and called it alignment. I thought he was backing me. In truth, he was building a version of the deal where I was invisible. It wasn't until I walked into the Thursday leadership huddle and saw the slide deck that it hit me. Cole had copied my original flow right down to the title font I used exclusively on Meridian briefs, Lotto semi-bold 18-bit. Except this time, there was no mention of me. No credit. Just presented by Cole Armstrong, VP Strategic Partnerships. That was the first red flag. The second came when I overheard his assistant on the phone whispering, "Yes, we've removed her name from the summary package. Just Cole now." They were airbrushing me out, soft delete. Not fired, not demoted. Just folded into the wallpaper. But here's the mistake people like Cole always make. They mistake visibility for control. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that Meridian's final legal clause was handwritten by me. At their request. They wanted a direct personal assurance from someone they trusted, and it wasn't him. So I stayed still. Let him build the stage. Let him soak in the spotlight. Because he wasn't preparing for a deal. He was rehearsing for a performance. And I was going to make sure the curtain dropped on cue, just not the way he imagined. It wasn't always like this. There was a time I thought Cole and I were on the same side. 6 months ago, we walked into a boardroom together for our first joint pitch. 7 delegates from Meridian Global, each flown in from a different region, Geneva, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, jet-lagged, skeptical, unsmiling. I had built the entire deck myself. Market readiness models, deployment scenarios, ESG compliance breakdowns, all customized in 2 languages. 10 minutes before the meeting, Cole pulled me aside. "Let me take lead on the opening," he said. "They'll respond better to a senior voice." I hesitated, then nodded. He was polished, no question. Tall, camera-ready, perfect teeth. He had the kind of voice that sounded like he'd never been wrong a day in his life. So I handed him the remote. He introduced Brixton Energy like we were a lifestyle brand. Misquoted our emissions projection by 12%. Mispronounced the name of their CEO, then smiled through it like it was all part of the charm. Somehow the room laughed. They clapped. And Cole turned to me after and whispered, "We're a great team, huh?" I wanted to believe that. I even defended him when our director questioned the data mix-up later. But now I see it clearly. That was the match. Not the one I struck, the one I handed him. I had given him presence, credibility, an open lane to drift from shadow to spotlight. And now he thought he could walk into the biggest deal of our careers with a contract I'd built and pretend I was just the assistant who fetched coffee. But Cole had never closed a deal this complex before. He didn't know Meridian's legal rep personally. He didn't know the clause I negotiated to delay Phase 2 until September, avoiding hurricane season in the southeast grid. He didn't even notice I'd embedded a hidden fail-safe initials tucked into the final margin of the signed draft. He'd taken the remote that day, but I still held the power, and this time I wasn't handing it over. From that moment on, I disappeared strategically. I stopped joining prep calls unless directly invited. When Cole's assistant sent calendar holds labeled optional, I marked myself as tentative. In meetings, I took notes instead of speaking. I smiled when spoken to, nodded at the right times, and never ever interrupted. People stopped noticing I was in the room. That was the point. Cole had stepped fully into the role he'd been rehearsing. Now he was the architect of the deal, the one who brought Meridian back to the table, the voice behind the numbers, the smile behind the strategy. He was feeding his version of the story to everyone: legal, marketing, even HR. The camera crews had already been scheduled. Brixton's comms team was calling the signing a landmark moment in renewable innovation. It was more like a burial. They wanted the contract signed by Friday. And Cole, drunk on praise, was sprinting toward the finish line without noticing the cracks beneath his feet. What he didn't realize was that every adjustment Meridian had requested last minute, from the modified rollout dates to the carbon credit verification path, had been handwritten on paper at their insistence in front of their legal team. They never trusted digital only. And the only person who had scanned, filed, and countersigned that handwritten appendix was me. The version on the shared drive, the one Cole had printed and passed around in rehearsals, incomplete, outdated, non-compliant. I didn't need to sabotage anything. I didn't need to warn anyone. All I had to do was wait. I began preparing in silence. I pulled version A, the real complete agreement, from my secure drawer. I locked it in a fireproof bag and left it at my apartment. I scrubbed my laptop of anything useful and replaced it with old slide decks and dummy spreadsheets. If Cole's team tried to snoop, they'd find nothing. If they asked me to upload a new copy, I'd smile and say, "Oh, I thought Cole already had it." He wanted me to fade out, so I did. But ghosts don't disappear. They haunt. And I was waiting for the perfect moment to knock. Wednesday afternoon, I ran a final sweep. Emails, red lines, draft history, shared folders, everything Cole had touched in the last 3 weeks. And that's when I saw it exactly what I'd expected and feared. 2 versions. Version A, the official airtight contract. The one I spent 6 months negotiating clause by clause. It had been reviewed by Brixton's legal team, signed by Meridian's compliance officer, and included all the custom delivery windows and third-party audit requirements. It lived on an encrypted drive, printed, sealed, initialed, and locked in my personal drawer. Only I had access. Version B, the one Cole had distributed, bloated deadlines, no legal sign-off. Carbon offset figures that weren't just wrong, they were fabricated. He'd shaved 3 weeks off the deployment timeline and padded Phase 3 results to sound more headline-worthy. A perfect PR stunt and a contractual disaster. Only 3 people knew version B existed: Cole, his assistant, and me. And only one person had both versions. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter, the 2 drafts side by side. One truthful, one poisoned. I could have flagged it to legal. Could have hit reply all on Cole's last thread and blown it wide open. But that would have made me the whistleblower. And they'd twist the story. They always do. Instead, I folded version A back into its folder and slipped it under my coat. The pen they gave me when I first signed on at Brixton, gold-plated, engraved, clipped to the flap like a seal. Let them run with their fantasy. Let Cole rehearse his big moment in the spotlight. Because Meridian's lead counsel, Julia Keene, had requested one thing: no final signing unless Lauren Hale confirms compliance, in writing or in person. I hadn't confirmed a thing. The next morning, I saw Cole in the hallway. He was glowing, tan from a recent working vacation in Palm Springs. He passed me without stopping, just nodded and said, "Hope you're getting some rest before the big day." I smiled back. Wouldn't miss it. He never asked if the contract was ready. He never checked if the version he held was the right one. He was too busy polishing his crown. He didn't notice the stage was missing a floorboard. And I was standing right over the break. Friday morning, 9:12 a.m. The 15th floor of Brixton Energy looked like a tech expo married a luxury hotel. Glass tables, LED walls looping our mission video, fresh flowers in Brixton blue and white. A sustainability lounge, someone called it. Cole called it his moment. He was already there when I arrived, navy suit, fresh shaved tie pin, catching the light. He posed under the Meridian Global banner like it was a red carpet. I walked in unnoticed, just another figure with a clipboard. They'd staged everything: velvet folders, ceremonial pens, a camera crew off to the side. Julia Keene and her legal team arrived precisely on schedule. Sharp heels, neutral expressions, no small talk. She gave a single nod in Cole's direction, then sat. The press began to settle in, murmuring to one another, lenses ready. Cole cleared his throat, flashed his best executive smile, and launched into his speech. "Today marks not just a milestone for Brixton Energy," he said, "but a promise to innovate boldly, partner globally, and lead responsibly." He thanked departments that had no involvement. Name-dropped executives who hadn't touched the deal. He didn't mention me. Not once. I didn't flinch. That was the plan. Julia opened the folder, started reading silently. Page 1, page 2, page 3. At page 8, she paused. Her brow twitched. For confirmation, she said, her tone even, but sharp, "This delivery schedule reflects our revised terms from last month." Cole blinked. "Yes, absolutely. That timeline was aligned across our teams." Julia tapped the page. "Because this says Phase 1 launches June 1st. We agreed to August 15th, with a 10-day grace period." The room shifted. Legal counsel leaned forward. PR dropped their tablets. The air stiffened. "I believe that's just an older version," Cole said quickly. "There's a finalized copy. It's—" "I can have someone," Julia raised her hand. "Is there a version that reflects all revisions signed by your legal team and confirmed by Lauren Hale?" Silence. Cole's assistant froze, stammered something about misplaced files. Julia closed the folder, spine straight. "We don't sign on assumptions." Flashbulbs stopped. PR whispered into earpieces. The deal was cracking in real time. I took 3 quiet steps forward. No drama, no accusation, just presence. I faced Julia directly. "That version wasn't approved," I said. "I recommend we pause the signing." The room dropped into stillness. Julia's eyes flicked to mine and recognition dawned. The woman on all those late-night Zooms, the one who flew overnight to fix Clause 11, the one who actually knew what Meridian needed. She nodded once. "Thank you," she said, calm and final. Then turned to Cole. "I want all official documents sent from legal, and only from legal. Until then, this process is halted." Cole opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked at me, not with arrogance, with panic. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, because this wasn't revenge. This was correction. They tried to erase me. But you can't erase the person who holds the ink. By noon, the lounge was empty. The flowers were still there, the champagne still chilled, unopened. The reporters had packed up quietly, some already drafting headlines with phrases like "contract irregularities" and "deal suspended pending legal review." Cole was nowhere to be seen. I passed by the executive wing on my way back to my desk and caught a glimpse through the glass. He was inside one of the small boardrooms, shoulders hunched, flanked by Brixton's general counsel, and a man I didn't recognize, likely someone from Risk. The blinds shut a moment later. I didn't need to hear what was said. The body language said enough. No excuses, no spin, just accountability, the hard kind. That afternoon, HR called me in. No thank you, no apology, just formality. 3 people sat across from me, legal compliance, and someone from corporate integrity. They asked if I had known about the version discrepancy in advance. I did, I said. Plainly, "Why didn't you raise it earlier?" I held their gaze. "Because I wasn't asked to be part of it." No one said a word after that. They didn't have to. At 5:04 p.m., I slid a white envelope across the desk. Inside my resignation, no rant, no bullets, just one line. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position at Brixton Energy. I didn't clear my desk, didn't forward a single file. Everything that mattered had already been archived and encrypted and locked away outside their reach. As I stepped into the elevator, the only thing I carried was my coat and the same gold pen I had once signed the original draft with. I passed a few coworkers on the way out. Some nodded, most avoided eye contact. But one thing was clear. Whatever story Cole had been telling, whatever version of events they'd all been fed, it had just collapsed. He'd pushed me out, tried to steal the spotlight, and all it took to burn the whole set down was one missing name, mine. 3 days later, I was sitting at my kitchen counter with no alarm set and no unread emails. It was the first Monday in years that didn't begin with a conference call or a project status update. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle clink of ceramic as I poured myself a second cup of coffee. Then my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Lauren Hale, the voice asked, sharp, professional, unmistakable, speaking. "This is Julia Keene." I sat up straighter. She didn't offer small talk. No apology, no flattery, just precision. "We've decided not to proceed with Brixton Energy. We're terminating all future negotiations with them." I waited. That wasn't a surprise. But she continued, "We'd like to reopen the project, independently, and we'd like you to lead it." I blinked. "As what, a consultant?" she said. "Not an employee, not a middle manager. You'd lead the deal direct to Meridian, on your terms. Name your rate, name your team." There was a pause, not hesitation, just clarity. A week ago, I might have asked if she had spoken to Cole, if Brixton would retaliate, if this was a test, but not now. Julia added, "We don't want polish. We want the person who kept us honest, the one who actually understood the work." Those words landed harder than I expected. Not because they praised my loyalty, but because they finally saw my value not as a background player, but as the constant, the voice that never lied, the one who didn't flinch when it counted. "I accept," I said. Not with a flourish, not with adrenaline, just quiet assurance. Later that evening, the contract arrived in my inbox. My name was at the top. My rate, my terms, no edits, no fine print. I read it twice anyway, not out of doubt, but because I trusted myself too much not to. And when I signed, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt centered, because for once I wasn't surviving someone else's version of the story. I was writing my own. It's been 4 weeks since the signing that never happened. Brixton's PR team tried to do damage control. Phrases like leadership realignment and renewed vision strategy started floating around LinkedIn and internal memos. But the industry knew. They always do. Cole Armstrong's name vanished from Brixton's executive page overnight. No press release, no farewell post, just gone. The whispers came quickly: internal audit, contract breach, client defection. None of it was my concern anymore. I never returned to the building, no goodbye drinks, no carefully worded farewell email, just silence, the kind you choose for yourself after years of being talked over. Meridian's new contract went through quietly. I onboarded a 2-person operations team, hired a compliance expert I used to mentor, rented a sunlit office in the Fremont district, no marble floors, no press walls, just whiteboards, coffee, and focus. There were no politics behind me, no backroom maneuvering, no one standing in front of my work and calling it theirs. And I wasn't angry anymore, because I didn't need revenge. I just needed clarity. There was a moment 2 weeks ago where I caught sight of my own reflection in the cafe window across the street from my office. Same coat, same laptop. But the look in my eyes was different. I wasn't waiting to be seen. I wasn't trying to prove I belonged in a room someone else had built. I was finally in a room I built myself. And the silence that used to sting. Now it felt like peace. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it doesn't trend, it doesn't show up in headlines. Sometimes it arrives in an empty seat at a board table, in a deal that never closes, in a phone that no longer rings for the wrong reasons. Sometimes it's just knowing you didn't need to yell to be heard. You just had to outlast the lie. And when the time came, you answered. Not with a scream, but with a signature.